she gave herself to a stranger to save him, then found out he was the billionaire who owned her fate. She gave her first night to a stranger just to save her dying father. But when the man removed his mask, she realized she had just changed her entire destiny. Welcome to Billionaire Stories Untold. If you enjoy deeply emotional stories of redemption and true love, please subscribe and hit the bell. Now, let's dive into the untold story that changed everything. Let us return to our main character. The rain fell hard against the city skyline of Manhattan that night, slicing through the darkness like broken glass. Isabella Moore pressed both hands against the steering wheel, her eyes burning from tears and exhaustion. She had not slept for 2 days. Her father's heart surgery was scheduled for dawn, and the hospital had demanded a deposit she could never afford. Every call for help had gone unanswered, until an unknown number appeared on her screen, with a voice that sounded too calm to be real. "Miss Moore," he said, "I can help you, but my offer comes with conditions." That voice belonged to Adrian Cole, a self-made billionaire whose face rarely appeared in public. Rumor had it he built his empire from the ashes of betrayal. No one truly knew his heart or whether he still had one. When he met Isabella that night, she was nothing but a desperate woman trying to buy a miracle. To him, she was an answer to a different kind of loneliness he had long buried. Inside the penthouse, the world outside ceased to exist. He looked at her as if measuring every ounce of fear she tried to hide. "I will pay for the surgery," he said, "but you will stay with me for 6 months. You will pretend to be my fiancé." The words crashed through her like thunder. Pretend, with a man like him. But her father's weak heartbeat echoed louder in her mind than pride or fear. She signed the paper without reading the fine print, sealing a contract that would soon turn her life upside down. That night, under the faint light of New York's skyline, she entered a world of power, control, and secrets she was not ready to face. Adrian stood by the window, glass of whiskey in hand, watching the storm reflect in her eyes. For a man who owned everything, he had never seen someone look so fragile and yet so brave. "She thinks this is about money," he whispered to himself. "But it is about something far more dangerous." When Isabella finally closed her eyes, the city kept breathing outside a restless heartbeat, waiting for the storm to break. Neither of them knew that the lie they had built to survive would soon become the only truth either could trust. The story of how Isabella Moore ended up in that penthouse began 3 days earlier. It started in the narrow hallway of St. John's Hospital, where the smell of antiseptic and cold coffee lingered. Isabella stood by her father's bedside, clutching the last hospital bill that felt heavier than her entire life. The doctors spoke gently, but their words cut deeper than any blade. Without payment, her father's heart surgery would be canceled. She had already sold her car, her mother's jewelry, and even withdrawn from school to care for him. But the money was never enough. Every door she knocked on had closed in her face until a nurse mentioned a private foundation that sometimes funded emergency cases. Desperation became her only courage. She filled out the form that same night, not knowing the name on the foundation letterhead was Adrian Cole. Adrian's assistant, a woman named Vivian, called the next morning. Her voice was precise, efficient, and emotionless. "Mr. Cole would like to meet you in person," she said. "He prefers direct discussions." The address was on Fifth Avenue, inside one of the tallest glass towers in Manhattan. Isabella almost turned back twice on her way there, her hands trembling as she pressed the elevator button to the top floor. When the doors opened, she stepped into a world she had never seen. Marble floors, walls of tinted glass, and the distant sound of classical music echoed through the air. Adrian Cole stood by the window, dressed in a black suit, the skyline stretching behind him like a crown. He turned slowly, studying her as if time had stopped. "You are Isabella Moore," he said calmly, "the one asking for $120,000 for her father's operation." She nodded, unable to find her voice. He walked closer, his eyes unreadable. "I do not give charity, but I do make agreements." "What kind of agreement?" she whispered. Adrian poured himself a glass of whiskey and set it down without drinking. "I need someone to play a role for me," he said. "My grandmother's will requires me to be engaged before the end of this quarter. I do not believe in marriage, but I need a fiancé to silence the board and my family." Isabella stared at him in disbelief. "You want me to pretend to be your fiancé?" For 6 months, he replied. You will attend events, live in my residence, and act the part. In return, your father's surgery and hospital expenses will be fully covered. Her mind spun. Every rational part of her screamed no, but the image of her father's pale face crushed her hesitation. And when the 6 months are over? She asked. You will walk away with a clean slate, he said. No obligations, no contact, just your freedom back. Adrian slid a folder across the glass table. Inside lay a contract written in precise legal language, already signed on his end. His name, Adrian James Cole, was printed in bold. Isabella stared at it for a long moment, then took the pen. I will do it, she said softly. He nodded once, expressionless. Then from this moment on, you belong to my world, Miss Moore. As she signed her name, she did not notice the flicker of something almost human cross his eyes. Outside, the lights of New York began to glow, signaling the beginning of a deal that would bind two strangers by more than ink and paper. And somewhere deep inside that tower of glass and secrets, destiny quietly took its first breath. The next morning, Isabella awoke in a place that did not feel real. The suite was larger than her entire apartment building, with floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the Manhattan skyline. Every detail spoke of quiet wealth, marble floors, fresh orchids, and the faint hum of a city that never slept. For a moment, she forgot why she was there, until she saw the envelope on the nightstand. Inside was the contract she had signed, stamped with Adrian Cole's signature and her new title, fiancé. Downstairs, a team of stylists was already waiting. Vivian, Adrian's assistant, guided her through every step with the efficiency of a machine. You will attend a charity gala tonight, she said. Mr. Cole will introduce you as his fiancé. There will be photographs. You must smile, but not too much. Isabella stared at her reflection as the makeup artist worked. The woman in the mirror looked perfect, almost unrecognizable. Beneath the silk dress and diamond earrings, her heart pounded like a trapped bird. When Adrian entered the room, the air shifted. He looked impeccable in his tailored black suit, his presence commanding yet distant. Do not let anyone see fear in your eyes, he said softly. In my world, weakness is an invitation for destruction. I am not afraid, she replied, even though her hands betrayed her. That evening, the gala unfolded inside a ballroom glittering with chandeliers and whispered ambition. Cameras flashed, champagne flowed, and the city's elite surrounded them like circling hawks. Adrian's hand rested lightly on her back, guiding her through conversations she barely understood. Every smile she gave was rehearsed, every laugh calculated. Then, an older woman approached Adrian's grandmother, Eleanor Cole, the matriarch whose will had forced this entire arrangement. Her eyes were sharp despite her gentle voice. So, you are the young woman who has captured my grandson's heart, she said. Isabella's throat tightened. Before she could speak, Adrian replied smoothly, Yes, grandmother. Isabella and I met by fate. She saved me when I least deserved saving. The lie rolled off his tongue effortlessly, but Isabella felt the weight of it press against her chest. She nodded politely, playing the role he had scripted. When the orchestra began to play, Adrian leaned closer. Dance with me, he whispered. She hesitated, then took his hand. The world faded into the soft rhythm of violins and the glow of chandeliers. For the first time, she saw something in his eyes, something that did not look like control. It looked like pain. After the gala, the car ride home was silent. Rain streaked across the windows. As the city lights blurred into gold and silver, Adrian finally spoke, his voice low. You did well tonight. You fooled them all. Is that what you wanted? She asked quietly. A perfect lie. He looked out the window, expression unreadable. Sometimes lies are the only way to survive. When they reached the penthouse, Isabella stepped out of the car and looked up at the endless tower of glass. She had entered his world, but it did not feel like hers. Behind those walls were secrets she could not yet see, and emotions neither of them dared to name. Inside the elevator, their reflections stood side by side, two strangers bound by paper, pretending to belong together. Neither realized that the act they performed would soon blur into something dangerously real, and as the elevator doors closed, the contract between them quietly began to change shape. The days that followed the gala were wrapped in quiet tension. Every morning, Isabella woke to the view of the city, glimmering below, yet her world felt colder than ever. She had become the perfect image of Adrian Cole's fiancé, poised, graceful, and silent. Her face appeared in magazines beside his, her name whispered across society columns. But behind those perfect photographs, the truth remained hidden. Their love was an illusion signed in ink. Adrian treated her with distant politeness. He was never cruel, but never kind. Their conversations stayed on the surface business, schedules, appearances, yet sometimes, when he thought she was not looking, Isabella caught a flicker of loneliness in his eyes. It vanished the moment she met his gaze, as if he had trained himself to bury it. Vivian, the ever-watchful assistant, ensured that Isabella followed every rule of the contract. "You must not leave the residence without notice," she reminded her. "And remember, the media believes this engagement is real. Any mistake could destroy Mr. Cole's reputation." One evening, Isabella wandered into the study, a place lined with books that smelled of cedar and thyme. On the desk lay a framed photograph of a younger Adrian with a woman who looked remarkably like him. Same eyes, same sharp confidence. The photo was cracked down the middle. She turned as Adrian's voice filled the room. "That was my mother," he said quietly. "She died when I was 16. The media called it an accident. It was not." "I am sorry," Isabella whispered. He took a slow breath. "She believed people could be saved. I learned they cannot." His tone was firm, but his eyes betrayed a storm he no longer tried to hide. That night, Isabella could not sleep. For the first time, she wondered whether Adrian's heartlessness was not arrogance but armor. The next morning, reporters swarmed the entrance of the Cole building. Someone had leaked the story of their engagement, and the world demanded proof. Cameras flashed, and questions filled the air. Adrian stepped out first, his hand reaching for Isabella's. "Stay close," he said. Her pulse quickened as his fingers intertwined with hers. The warmth of his touch surprised her. They faced the cameras together, and for a brief moment, the noise faded. To the world, they looked like the perfect couple, elegant, united, in love. When they returned inside, Isabella tried to pull away, but he did not release her hand immediately. His eyes searched hers for something she could not name. Then he let go, his voice calm again. "You handled that well. You are learning fast." That night, a storm rolled over the city. Lightning flashed across the skyline, reflecting off the glass walls of the penthouse. Isabella stood by the window, lost in thought, when Adrian approached. "Do you regret signing that contract?" he asked suddenly. She hesitated, then said, "Every day, but not because of what I lost, because of what I am starting to feel." His expression froze. For the first time, the man who commanded boardrooms and controlled empires looked uncertain. He took a step closer but stopped himself. "Feelings are dangerous, Miss Moore. Do not mistake comfort for love." "Then what about you?" she asked softly. "Are you capable of love, Mr. Cole?" The silence between them stretched until the thunder outside broke it apart. He turned away, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not anymore." As he walked out, Isabella felt the truth settle deep within her chest. The contract had brought them together, but something real was beginning to grow in the spaces they tried to deny. And in that quiet apartment high above the city, the line between pretending and feeling blurred a little more with every heartbeat. The following weeks unfolded like a quiet war inside the Cole penthouse. Isabella and Adrian continued their act before the world, but behind closed doors, something fragile was unraveling. The line between duty and emotion was vanishing. Each time their eyes met, the silence grew heavier, filled with questions neither dared to ask. One morning, the tabloids exploded with a headline that sent shockwaves through the mansion. "Adrian Cole's fiancé comes from a family of debt and scandal." The photos were cruel, taken from hospital records and old public files that exposed Isabella's past. Reporters called it a deception. The board questioned Adrian's judgment, and Vivian, ever loyal, delivered the news with a cold expression. "This could destroy your image," she warned him. Adrian said nothing. He walked into his office, the newspaper trembling slightly in his hand. For the first time, Isabella saw something raw flicker behind his calm mask anger, but not at her. It was the fury of a man watching his walls crack. "Who leaked this?" he asked. Vivian hesitated. Someone inside the board, perhaps. They never wanted a woman like her near you. Adrian's voice hardened. Find out who, and make sure they regret it. Later that evening, Isabella entered the study to find him staring out the window, the skyline painted in amber light. You should not have to defend me, she said softly. This was never supposed to be real. He turned, his voice low. It stopped being pretend the moment someone hurt you. The air between them changed. The man who had once spoken only in contracts now spoke with emotion he could not hide. Isabella felt her heart race, but before she could respond, Vivian entered with a folder. There is something else, she said. The board is threatening to vote against your next project unless you end this engagement. Adrian's jaw tightened. Then they can take their vote and burn it. When Vivian left, Isabella stepped closer. Why are you risking everything for me? Because I made a promise, he said. And because when I see you, I see the one thing I stopped believing in hope. That night, the storm outside mirrored the precipice. Chaos inside. Adrian poured himself a drink, the ice clinking like echoes of doubt. Isabella approached him quietly. You cannot protect me from this world, she said. He looked at her, his gaze softer than she had ever seen. Maybe not, but I can stand between you and the parts that would destroy you. The distance between them dissolved. The tension that had built for weeks finally found its release not in words, but in a silence that spoke louder than any confession. For the first time, Isabella did not feel like a stranger in his world. She felt seen. But even as they stood together, shadows lingered. Outside, cameras waited for another story to break. Inside, Vivian made a quiet call to someone whose name she did not speak aloud. It is done, she whispered. He will never forgive her when he finds out the truth. And just like that, beneath the glittering lights of Manhattan, love and deception began to intertwine. The contract that had once been about money was turning into something neither of them could control. A bond born from lies, now beating with a heart that was painfully real. For a while, it almost felt like peace. The scandal had faded from the headlines, and the public slowly began to believe their story again. Adrian and Isabella shared quiet breakfasts by the window, laughter softening the coldness that had once filled the penthouse. She started to see glimpses of the man behind the billionaire mask, the one who read poetry late at night, who touched her hand without realizing it, who looked at her as if she was something he could not afford to lose. But peace in Adrian Cole's world never lasted long. One afternoon, he was in a meeting when an encrypted email arrived from an anonymous sender. The subject line was simple: you deserve to know who she really is. Attached were hospital records, bank transactions, and a signed receipt proof that the night Isabella had come to him, she had not met him by coincidence. The documents revealed that her father's medical bills had been transferred to a private account 2 days before she ever signed the contract. The sender claimed that Isabella had known his identity from the beginning, that she had played the perfect role to gain his trust. Adrian's pulse froze. His vision blurred as he read the words again and again. Betrayal, manipulation, lies. By the time Isabella returned home that evening, the penthouse no longer felt like home. The lights were dim, and Adrian stood by the window, holding the printed pages. His expression was unreadable, but his silence cut sharper than any words. Adrian? She whispered. What happened? He turned slowly, his voice cold. Tell me the truth. Did you know who I was before that night? Her eyes widened in shock. No, I swear I did not. What are you talking about? He threw the papers on the table, the sound echoing through the room. Do not lie to me, these records say. Otherwise, they show you received help before we even met. Was this entire thing? His voice cracked slightly. Just another transaction for you. Tears filled her eyes. I do not know where that came from, but it is not true. You have to believe me. I believed you once, he said quietly, and that was my mistake. She stepped forward, reaching for him, but he moved away. The distance between them felt infinite. Everything I have done was for my father, she said, her voice trembling. I never wanted to hurt you. Adrian looked at her, his jaw tight. And yet you did. That night, Isabella packed her things in silence. He did not stop her. The elevator doors closed, separating them with finality. Outside, rain washed over the streets like tears from a sky too heavy to hold them. In the darkness of his study, Adrian replayed every memory, every touch, every word. The woman he had begun to trust, the one he had allowed into the deepest corners of his guarded heart, had become the face of his greatest pain. But what he did not know was that the betrayal had been crafted by someone far closer to him than Isabella could ever be. Vivian had ensured the perfect lie would look convincing enough to destroy them both. And as the storm raged over Manhattan, two hearts that had finally found each other were torn apart by a secret neither had created. The deepest secrets are about to change everything. Subscribe now to catch the dramatic twist that is coming in the next chapter. Days turned into weeks after Isabella left the penthouse. The city moved on, but Adrian did not. His mornings became mechanical coffee, meetings, silence. The world saw him as the same relentless billionaire. But inside, something essential had gone missing. The woman who had filled the cold corners of his life was gone, and for the first time, money could not bring her back. Across town, Isabella stayed in a modest apartment above a bookstore. She found part-time work and tried to rebuild her life piece by piece. Every night, she checked her phone, hoping to see a message from him. None ever came. Yet she could not hate him. His anger had been born from the same pain she carried, the pain of betrayal and love colliding in the same breath. One evening, as she closed the store, Vivian appeared at the door. Her face was calm, but her eyes carried a flicker of guilt. "You deserve to know the truth," she said quietly. She handed Isabella a flash drive. "Everything that destroyed you, it did not come from Adrian. It came from me." Vivian explained how the false documents had been forged to protect the company's image, how she had feared Isabella's presence would weaken Adrian's resolve. "But he never stopped protecting you," she said. "He kept the board from pressing charges. He said he owed you his peace." Tears blurred Isabella's vision. "He believed I betrayed him because of what you did." Vivian nodded, her voice cracking. "Yes, and now he is destroying himself for it." That night, Isabella walked through the rain-soaked streets of Manhattan. Every corner of the city whispered his name. She stopped outside the tower she once called home, watching the light in his office window burn against the night. Inside, she knew he was still awake, because she was too. At that same moment, Adrian sat alone in his study, staring at the contract she had signed months ago. The paper was torn, but her signature remained. He traced it with his thumb, realizing that no matter how hard he tried, he could not erase her from the life he had built on control. He whispered to the empty room, "I should have believed her." Outside, Isabella took a deep breath, the wind carrying her silent promise. "I will make you see the truth." Both hearts moved in opposite directions that night, yet somehow, they were finally walking toward the same ending. The following morning, Isabella gathered all the evidence Vivian had given her and went straight to the Cole Tower. Her hands shook as she entered the building she had once left in tears. The guards recognized her instantly, but this time, there was no hesitation in her steps. She was no longer the frightened woman who had signed a contract to survive. She was a woman who came to reclaim the truth. When she reached the top floor, Adrian was in a meeting with his board of directors. His expression was cold, his voice steady, but his eyes looked distant and hollow. The room fell silent when she walked in. Vivian followed behind her, holding the flash drive like a confession. "Mr. Cole," Isabella said, her voice calm but firm. "You need to see this." Adrian stared at her as if seeing a ghost. "You should not be here," he said. "Then fire me from a job I never had," she replied. "But you are going to hear the truth." She placed the drive on the table and played the recording. Vivian's voice filled the cleared room, admitting how she had forged documents and leaked lies to destroy the engagement. The board members exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from shock to shame. Adrian's hands clenched, his jaw tightening as the weight of every lie hit him all at once. When the audio ended, silence filled the room. Adrian stood slowly, his gaze locked on Isabella. "You were innocent," he whispered. "All this time." Tears filled her eyes. "I told you the truth, but you stopped listening." He walked toward her, every step heavy with regret. "I thought I was protecting myself," he said, "but all I did was destroy the one person who ever saw me as more than my money." She took a step back, her heart pounding. "I did not come here for forgiveness, Adrian. I came because the truth deserves to be seen." He reached out, his voice breaking. Then let me earn it back. The room disappeared around them. For the first time, there were no contracts, no cameras, no lies, just two people who had both lost and found each other in the most painful way possible. When Isabella finally looked up, the storm in his eyes had softened. He took her hand gently, as if afraid she might vanish again. "I do not want redemption," he said. "I want you." In that moment, the coldest billionaire in New York finally fell to his knees, not out of defeat, but out of love. If you want to witness how the coldest billionaire truly falls in love, subscribe now. The shocking truth is always revealed in our next episode. Weeks later, the world learned the truth. News outlets ran the story of the forged documents, the false accusations, and the assistant who confessed to orchestrating the betrayal. Public sympathy turned toward Isabella, but she did not seek attention. She only wanted peace. Adrian dissolved the contracts that had bound his company to the people who had deceived him. For the first time in years, he acted not from power, but from conscience. One afternoon, Isabella sat in the park reading a letter she had received from St. John's Hospital. Her father's recovery was complete. The doctors said it was a miracle. The surgery that had started her spiral into chaos had, in the end, saved more than one life. As she closed the letter, she heard familiar footsteps behind her. When she turned, Adrian stood there, no longer the man wrapped in armor and control. His suit was simple, his eyes softer. The city moved around them, but for that moment, it felt as if time stopped. "I thought I had everything," he said quietly. "Then I lost you and realized I had nothing at all." She rose slowly, meeting his gaze. "We both lost something," she replied, "but maybe what we found was better than what we were searching for." He smiled faintly, holding out a small velvet box. This time, no contracts, just a promise. Inside the box was not a diamond, but a simple gold band. It was not wealth that made it shine, but the honesty behind it. Isabella's eyes filled with tears as he continued. "You taught me that love is not a deal to win. It is a choice we make every single day." The wind carried the faint sound of laughter from a nearby street musician, and the moment felt almost unreal. She nodded and whispered, "Then I choose you." Adrian slipped the ring on her finger, his hand trembling slightly. The city skyline glowed behind them as the sun dipped below the horizon. In that golden light, two people who had once been strangers bound by lies now stood free, redeemed by truth, healed by love. From that day forward, Adrian and Isabella began a new life. Far from contracts and expectations, their story became a quiet legend whispered in high society, not about money or scandal, but about the billionaire who learned that the greatest fortune is a heart capable of love. Thank you for joining us for this cinematic adventure. If you want more untold stories of billionaire love and redemption, please subscribe and choose your next true heart journey on your screen now.